I mean, how many more people are we meant to have?
I don't know. Each class we get about 50 to 60. So another 20 more maybe.
If we're doing the final project, how are we supposed to present?
Same, you can make a presentation in either Google spreadsheet. Google
Yeah, like, are we supposed to
presentation.
do a share screen?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Share screen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Oh, just to clarify, I think some of you emailed the project is not due today. It's due on January 9th. So you have another roughly 20 days.
Wait, so if it's due on January 9th, the people who are taking who are doing the final project don't have to present today?
Yeah, you don't have to present today. Yeah, you have to present on January 9th.
So we don't take the final exam either, right?
Exactly. Instead of the final exam, you just do the presentation on that day.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we have class on winter break?
The next class is on January 9th.
Oh, okay, so no. Okay, thank you then.
Mhm. So I'm assuming your winter breaks have started or are starting this
Yeah,
weekend?
they started.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you guys can have some time off. Okay, we'll get started. Looks like people have stopped at least trickling in. So hopefully everybody who has decided to do the project have sent their names, or those who haven't decided are no longer going to do it. And hopefully you guys have started work on that. So before I start sharing my screen and we start discussing, uh, actually, we discussed about classes briefly last week, right? So can anyone explain, like if you want to go, if you want to talk, or that's fine. Can anyone explain what you understood from that? Based on your understanding, I'll see what we can, where we start today. Okay, since no one is volunteering, I'll probably just randomly ask someone. Meghna, what do you recollect about classes, or when would you use a class?
Like, I usually use coding in like GitHub and stuff, so I guess there when I'm creating like a small website, I might use Python. Like I might use some.
Right, but when would you use a class? What is the difference between a class? Oh, so someone Sai Shriya Satya Narayan. Yeah, when would you use a? Oh, Shruti.
You could use it for like if there's any like for example if there is a class for like a home and accessories in a home, in order to like customize the attributes for yourself, you could use like class.
Right. So that's a good summary. So I want to take a step back and see, maybe because last time I didn't know how many of you got onto the main theme. Main theme is what is called as object-oriented programming. Classes in Python are just a way of implementing what is called as object-oriented programming. Whatever we have seen till before last class was a way of writing code called procedural programming, where you write a function and the function does the work. So you write instructions. And what happened as programs started getting complex is that people started creating different functions, and when bigger teams had to start working together, it was getting difficult to have people work together and build bigger things. Additionally, data started playing a crucial role in programming. So for example, like what someone was saying, houses. So let's say you want to build a program that is used by the city of wherever, whichever city you are in, like city of Woodland Hills, to decide whether your home plan should be permitted or not. So your program is working on the data, right? It's working on a home plan. Or a simpler example, let's say you have to have a school, you're building a program for a school to manage their data. So you would have somebody, the school's program will have some students, the school's program will have some classes, students take classes offered by teachers, maybe 2-3 teachers teach the same class in different years. So you have all these various pieces of data, and when the program gets large enough, no one person programs everything. So you would be dividing this amongst teammates. But there was no easy way to make these interface nicely. And that's where object-oriented programming started. Classes are just a way in which object-oriented programming is implemented in a lot of languages. So hopefully that motivation is clear. So that's why I was not really saying classes are the ultimate thing or anything. It's just one way of making sure that the piece of data that you are coding and the functionality that you are coding is all together. This idea is called encapsulation. Can you make me share? Oh, okay. So that's the primary idea in which this whole thing started, where people wanted to encapsulate or wanted to make their program self-contained. Oh, okay. So that's the genesis of classes. And in last class, we already saw it. How do you create a class? Does someone want to, does someone remember the syntax, or if you want, you can share in chat. No volunteers? Okay, someone sent a big chat. Okay, nice. So Shruti sent this class, good job. Okay, Prince also sent his own class. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. Oh, we sent even longer class. Okay, so this is a definition of a class. So Shruti's class is called outfit, Prince's class is called car. And this class car has some variables, nothing fancy, right? So some variables and a method. Same way Shruti's class has some variables and a way to print what is there in that class, right? So when you ask for my outfit, so a class is like a blueprint of a house or like a design of a car, whatever. And then you have class instances. So the way to think of this is whenever you want to use this class, which is to say, we have already done this a lot of times. Whenever you wanted to use, let's say, for example, file, when you wanted to read a file, or when you wanted to find a length of a file, we started using certain classes or certain namespaces in which classes were defined. We've already done some of this. So if you want to use this class, since Prince already created a class called car, you don't have to rewrite it. You could just use this car class and then you start setting this. Okay, so there is a small variation. We'll go. So is this clear to everyone? Can each of you create your own class and write? Okay, yeah. So Akshita had a good idea, which is simply class person. What attributes would a class person have? What variables would you be interested in having for a person? Interesting. You mean hair color? Okay, hair color, shirt color, eye color. Okay. How come no one says name? Okay. Okay, so first would be like name, right? Yeah, so okay, we can say this person has some first name, has some last name. You wanted to say age, and then what else? Hair color, eye color. Okay, we'll go with a few attributes. Okay, so some attributes, right? So this is just the attributes. The advantage of this over something like this, right? You could have done this way also. Person equal person me equal to Karthik, right? We could have done it this way as well. What is the difference or advantage between this over this? Even if this class has nothing else, there is a small advantage of this method over this method. I could have declared a list and I could have put all the variables that I wanted inside the list, right? Or I could have gone for a dictionary. So we have already looked at how to do lists or dictionaries with these, right? So what's the advantage of doing with a class versus, so let's say first name. So these are all three different ways of holding data. What's the disadvantage of holding data this way? Any thoughts? If I held data in this manner, in a list, no label. Okay, that's one disadvantage. So good, that's no label. Right. So no label. That is no. We don't know what each. We don't know what each element really represents. Okay. What's the other disadvantage? What if we have to do this person me and then person? Since Shruti answered Shruti. Okay. So to list out all the elements. Yeah, that's true. So Meghana has another good point. So Shruti, I don't see the last name here, but Shruti Satyanarayan, hopefully. Assuming 12, 13, 14. I don't know eye color, hair color, so I'll just leave out. So what's the disadvantage? What happens if I remove this? Is this list still a list? This is still a list, right? There is no problem with this. Person Shruti is also a list. Now, does this list person me and person Shruti, are they similar? Right, it's still a list, but it no longer is the same kind of list, right? The first list had 5 elements and with some specific purpose. The second list has only 4 elements. So this was a challenge. So one challenge was message passing or data passing. So when we wanted to talk about a person, if we are all building a big project and when everybody talks about a person, yes, so specificity or like clear definition of what it represents. If we are all working together on a big project where we're trying to do something with like a people management system or like a voting management system for various states in the country, just because recently we've had election, maybe you want to add your social security number or your ID card number or photo or whatever, right? A voter would have all these attributes. And such a system has to have all this, right? You can't say, oh, okay, I'm a voter, but I don't have a photo. Of course, that's allowed in some states. Oh, somebody is stuck in the waiting room. Looks like everybody is in now. Okay, so you can have fixed data attributes. That's one advantage that a class brings. Right? By defining it as a class and not as a list or as a dictionary, these are generic reusable collections of data. Whereas a class is a tightly bound version of defining data. So now if I want to say person, instead of doing it one of these ways, I could say Karthik equal to person, right? And then say Karthik dot first name, or I could even say me, be very, very vague and say me equal to person, and then me dot first name equal to Karthik. I'll just by typing all this. So now if I haven't specified it, I already have all the variables. So if I want to simply say print me dot first name, this is as descriptive as any other style, right? It's as useful as I could have done the same thing with print person me or person Shruti of 0. Or I could have done this with person me too of first name. All of these are for similar purposes, but if you look at it, this style has some advantages, right? So that was the first motivation, or one of the primary motivations, that you have your data attributes fixed and clearly defined. And the second thing was, let's say I have this. Now I want to make sure what kind of a functions would a person have. So if a person is a class, what function would you want to define on a person? Maybe person is a bad class probably. Like let's go with car, because car can have a little bit of a description. So we have car. Car has color. This is make. Let's say make. Okay, tire, make of tires. Or okay, let's leave it so that I don't have to type. So car has okay, brand. He's calling car type as brand. So these are data. Now this is a car class. This car class has some data. Can you also write some functions on a car class? So this was a second purpose, right? First purpose was to clearly specifically define data related to a given object that you were working on. The second purpose was to write functions that are related to the class that we are working on. So what kind of a function would a car do? Any thoughts? What kind of function would you drive? Okay, yeah, simple, right? Like drive. Okay, you would have drive. What other functions could a car have?
Can we have like brake?
Okay, brake, fine. Okay, what else can you have in a car? Accelerate.
The radio.
Sorry, what was that?
Radio.
Radio would be like an attribute within the car, right? So radio would be an attribute. So some radio, and then you can have maybe radio turn on and turn off, right? Switch on radio, switch off radio.
Switching gears.
Okay, switch gear. Oops.
Auto drive?
Auto drive, nice.
Locking the car.
Okay, very nice. Auto. So self drive, right? Now, what someone said, locking the car, right? So this is all. So some of the things you could do with a car, right? Not all the things. Maybe there are lots. There are thousands of methods, right? This is where things get interesting. Yeah, refill gas, accelerate, switch on maps, switch on rear view camera. Thousands of possible functions, and this is where the challenge lies, right? When you are building this class, obviously one person cannot. If you guys are building a car based, let's say you are building a game, and in that game you have to build some car racing game, and in that game you have to all implement all of these things, right? Now obviously any car should have certain common things, like for example drive. all cars should have drive, all cars should have brake, all cars should have switch gears. But only some cars have self-drive, right? Not all cars have self-drive. So you will divide this work and maybe you could say, okay, I'm building this kind of car and you are building some other kind of car and so on. So by clearly defining the methods and the attributes, you can all initially define this and then start working on your own cars. And that's one of the biggest advantages of object-oriented programming. So before we go into more advantages, let's look at something that we started. So just some oh, somebody asked some message. Okay, so there are some special names to these variables when we, even though they are all variables, variables within a class are commonly called attributes. And when the functions within a class are commonly called as methods, there is no difference. This is a function. The reason why we call it a method is because it's a class method. It's a method within that class. And this is an attribute within that class. So just some more clear distinction on, is this a variable or is this an attribute? Just so that you know, it's actually referred to as scope. So if you are writing within the text block that is inside the class, it's an attribute. Whereas if I write it here, oops, so I can say color equal to white. This is a variable. This is a class attribute just based on where we are writing and how we are writing. Does this make sense? Like no difference really. You could even have the same name, just a way of referring to these things because they are tightly bound to this. Because when I say car.color, I'm referring to this. I'm not referring to this color, right? So it's not really a variable, it's an attribute. So when we said self.color, we are referring to the attribute. We are not referring to the, I mean, of course, we are referring to a variable, but it's also the attribute for this particular thing, self. So as a starting point. Also, last class, we looked at something, let's basically go with this basic definition. Let's come up with a simple definition of a class called point. What attributes does a class called point have? All of you who have studied geometry, you can all chat with me or chat with the class. You cannot chat with yourself. So when you are messaging, I am seeing your chat messages. Coordinate, x coordinate, y coordinate. Okay. Okay. So that's a good thing. So x coordinate and y coordinate. What method would a point have? Color is not a method a point would have. Reflection, okay, so velocity point would not necessarily have a velocity, right? Some object would have velocity. So one method that a class would have, point would have is distance from origin, right? So what's the distance from origin for a point? No, this is just, we are talking about point class, that's all. So what's the distance from origin for a point with coordinates x and y? Square root of x square minus y square or plus y square? Square root of x square plus y square, right? So you would say return self dot x coordinate square plus self dot y coordinate square and then whole square root. Someone said something else, reflection, okay? Right. So because there is some concern, let's see. So if I have a point, let me try drawing. So I have a point x here, or a point x comma y. What's its distance from the origin? Right. This is just square root of x square plus y square, right? By Pythagoras theorem. So this is one function that a point can have. What other functions can a point have? Just so for those who are thinking, the project is due January 9th, not today. So don't worry about the project. Coordinates, okay. So if you want to find out what are the coordinates of a point, so you would return a tuple, say, which x coord and y coord. Okay, so this is good enough. Let's see now. So now I want to declare a new point called new point equal to point, and then say new point dot x coord equal to 3, and new point dot x coord equal to y coord equal to 4. So now if I say new point dot distance from origin, it should tell me what's the distance from origin, right? So what did we do? We just basically went and specified the attributes for a given point, and then we calculated the distance from origin. Now, instead of, this is a very common thing, whenever you are instantiating a variable or instantiating, this is called instantiating a class, because you're referring to the class and then putting this parenthesis right next to it. So this is called class instantiation. And when you do that, you are creating a new object. So this is called an instance or an object of type point. This is just syntax, instantiation of a class. New point is either called an instance of class point or an object of type point. You can call it either way. It's commonly referred to in any one of these method ways. But would there ever be a situation other than defining the origin that you would not actually define the coordinates of your point? Would you ever just say new point equal to point and not do this unless you are referring to origin? Because all points have to have x and y coordinates, right? Right. So it's almost extra typing. When I do this, it's like I'm typing extra stuff to do something that I would always do, right? So one of the ways to avoid typing extra lines of code is by using a special method. So classes in Python have a lot of special methods. They are called magic functions, dunder functions, special functions. You can Google, you'll find a lot of these. There are lots of magic functions in Python. I don't know if we can even list. So this is just a small number of them. I think there are even more. I don't know if there are or magic methods. Sorry, they are called magic methods, not magic functions. There are probably a few dozens, at least maybe 40, 50 magic methods. There is nothing fancy. They're just called magic methods because they all do some special purpose. So one of the magic methods, the most commonly used ones, is called init. And this method,
Sir.
yeah.
Soptic stuck in the waiting room.
Oh, Someone's stuck in waiting room. Okay. Yeah, I admitted. Okay. So init is a special method. Again, you have to remember the purpose of init is it gets called right after the point after a class instance is created. So right after you create a class instance, you can call it. This gets called. So you could use this to specify your initialization. So init is basically short for initialization, right? I could do this. So what does this achieve for me? Let's see. If once I do this, now it's no longer letting me do it without any points. So I would always have to instantiate with these points. Of course, I could have made these optional parameters. So if I did this, so I can still have optional parameters, right? This works. Also, this works. Another point. Now I can say pass variables. Now as part of my instantiation itself, I pass the variables, right? I pass the attribute values. You see there are two variations in which you can instantiate an object and then set its attributes, or you can instantiate and set in the same line. This is just syntactical sugar. If you look online, these are just called syntactical sugar. Basically, it's making it easier for you or less typing. That's all. Neither method has any specific advantage over the other. You could do it this way or you could do it this way. There are some small advantages when your classes become slightly complex. Instead of just doing this initialization, maybe you want to like do some data validation here so that you make sure you don't set some garbage values into your coordinates. Like you don't send in alphabets, because alphabets can't be coordinates of a point, right? Things like that. You could check that if you use methods over direct attribute setting. There are some advantages, but mostly it is, if you're using one as a replacement for the other, it's just less typing. So far, any questions on what we did? Is this clear? If you have questions, please bring them up. Otherwise, we'll continue on more topics related to classes or object-oriented programming Python. Can classes work? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they can work without init. So if I remove this style wouldn't work then, because I had without the init, right? Yeah. Yeah. So initialization function or this underscore init is a way. So when you put two underscores in this, it's like a reserved convention. Again, it's a convention. I can always put two underscores here. There is really nothing that it is considered a internal function when you put two underscores. It is considered a private function when you put one underscore, so you cannot use it. So there is some convention that Python enforces. When you put two underscores, this is typically reserved for internal functions that get called automatically when you do something, like when you say point. Two internal functions get called when you do point. The two internal functions are new oh. Missing one for position. Just a second. I'm just trying to figure out what I did wrong. If anyone spots it, please let me know. Oh, okay, I'll get back to that basically in a second. So I think I'm doing something wrong when I type the new. But when you create a new instance of an object, two special functions get called. One is called the constructor or new. The other is called initialization. This initialization function can be used to set your initial values for the attributes within your class. That's the special purpose. It need not be there, but you can use it if you want to use it, so that you can avoid typing 3 lines of code. This versus this are accomplishing the same thing. There is no difference between this versus this, right? So when I typed 3 lines of code here, or when I typed 1 line of code here, they both ended up doing the same thing. That's because I use the initialization or underscore underscore init underscore underscore function to achieve this purpose. Does this make sense? Those of you who asked about the initialization function, it's a special, it's just useful for a specific purpose. And you can do it without that. Right? Like here I'm doing it without that by making optional parameters. Here I'm doing it with that. The other special function is called str. What this is when you want to print, let's say you want to print a class. Actually, let's first try to print a class. So if I do print of new point, what do you expect should happen if I try to print new point? Yeah, 1 second. I'll go over this print one, so maybe then you'll better understand. What do you expect will happen when I say print of new point? Okay, class point. But what nice if it printed what were all of its data. So one of you said all of its data. Okay, let's see what happens. So it would be nice to print x coordinate, y coordinate, right? So what happened here? What got printed here? Can you see? Can you see what got printed? It's telling us that underscore underscore main dot point. We'll come to this in a little bit later. Actually, remind me, this is called method mangling. So we have it printed that point, which is a function, is an object. So new point is an object of type point, and the address at which this is stored. So it's stored at this address. That's what this printed. But is that what you expect to print? No. So what do you want it to print? Some of you already said you wanted to print your x and y coordinates. So you can define this, or you can use this function called magic function called underscore underscore str underscore underscore to return a string that you want printed. Okay, so we can even say x comma y. I don't know which style you guys will like, but I am just doing it in the style that I like. I could say or I could simply return x comma y equal to whichever style you guys want. We can do it that way. X coord in fact, I'll even drop this one. We'll just return simply this thing. So now let's see what happens. Oh, str of this and str of this. Forgot they were integers. So if you see now, when I print it, it prints. Okay, so some. Okay, so Pawan, I made you host. I didn't know who made me host. So now it prints 3 comma 4, right? So these are special functions. This is a special function that allows you to set the initial values for the attributes of a given class. This is a special function that allows you to return a string representation of this particular class attributes. And there are other special functions, like for example, if you want to compare, let's say if this point is the same as this point, so this new point and another point, are they same? Are new point and another point same? Right, now. So let's see what happens if I try to do this. So it says false, as you would expect. But now let's see this. So right now our new point and another point the same thing? Right, but what is it saying when I try to print if these two are the same? Is it saying that they are the same thing? Right, so what's happening is it's comparing new point with another point. And if you remember, before I did this string, let me show you what's happening without doing this string. So now if I print it, it will become obvious. So if you look at these two strings, this is the first, sorry, not two strings, these two things that got printed. According to the program, new point is this and another point is this. Are these two the same? If you notice, these two addresses are different, right? So internally to the program, new point is not a string, right? When we were comparing, we were looking at the string representations. Yeah, those hex codes are the addresses at which they are stored, right? This is the address at which this point is stored in this computer's RAM. So when I try to print without the str special function, it's printing the actual address. And since these two addresses are not the same, these 2 points are not considered to be the same. But is this what you expect? This is what the program is doing for you, but is this what you expect? Do you expect these 2 points to be called different? No, right? So if you want to change the behavior of that, you would use another special function. I think it's called EQ. Sorry, got distracted by some. Okay. So we would do something like this. Let's see if this works. So can you see now that it printed? Yes. So this underscore underscore EQ is a special function called equality operator. When you put equal to here, now because the point class has underscore underscore EQ method defined, it will, instead of just trying to compare the addresses, now it tries to call this function, and this function is doing the comparison for you. So when you want to do the comparison, that function is doing the comparison. So does this make sense? Hopefully I'm not confusing you guys. We'll stop at this. We will not go any further into our special functions. So there are lots of special functions, and each special function has some purpose. The purpose of init special function is to initialize the attributes. You can use it for initializing the attributes. You don't have to use it. You can use it. The purpose of the str special function is to give a nice representation when you're printing this point, printing this class. You can nicely tell what should be printed. The purpose of the EQ special function is to use it for comparison. Is this clear? Okay. So if you guys want to take a few minutes, suggest some classes that you guys would like to build. Are there any classes that you would like to build to practice for 5 minutes or so? Anyone, some idea about a class? How about books? Okay, book is one suggestion.
Animals.
Animals, okay. So Jonathan, you try animals class. Meghna, you try books class. Someone else who wants to try cars class, try to create your own class. Try to set up some attributes for the class. Add any special functions you want, and then add some other function that would do some sort of calculation or some sort of work that's related to your class. And then you can start copy pasting your code. Because today we have only in private mode, whatever code you copy paste, only I am able to see. So you can feel free to copy paste and nobody else is viewing it anyways. Oh, you want my link? Okay, I actually didn't share my link today. Oh, actually, I probably can't share my link today because if I share, I think it will just go to the common link. Let me see if I can share and you guys get it. No, so I can only share. Oh, okay, now I can share with everyone, sorry. Okay. So somebody created new class called motorcycle, very nice. Motorcycle class has color, bike type of tires, and you can print it. So just for the person who created the motorcycle class, you could have done this instead of the attributes method, you could have used underscore underscore str method, right? Then it would have worked in along with print also. Instead of just having work with the attributes, you could have then said your bike dot print or print of your bike, and it would have done the same kind of thing. Can you try using that? Anyone else wants to share what classes you guys have created? Okay, good. Shruti, can you copy the rest of your code, Shruti? Otherwise, I don't know why it's giving that error. Okay, someone created a car class. Car class has owner name, color, company, payment. You mean the cost of the car, okay? Customization. Again, I think customization is not really what you're doing, right? So if you wanted to do customization, you should have passed the data attributes into the customization class also. Okay. Also, maybe whoever is doing car classes, maybe add a method that can compare cars and say which car is costly or which car is more cooler. So if you want to compare the rating of a car or the cost of a car, you could try comparison classes also. You can even do less than or equal to, greater than, and so on. So less than would be LT. Instead of EQ, you just do LT, and then you just check less than here. Okay, so point X coordinate. Okay. Okay. Right. Right. This define initialization has to be the specific name, Shruti. It cannot be any name. It has to be the specific name underscore init underscore. Only with this special name it knows to accept that syntax. Okay, someone did a house. Oh, very nice use of init method. Even nice use of calculating the area of the house. That's cool. Very nice usage of classes. Okay, Meghna is sharing code. Let's see. I'll pause sharing when I look at Meghna's code so that I don't show. You forgot to indent, I think, Meghna. So you have to indent everything, right? Like before your attributes, you should have like a tab or some spaces. And your function should have 2 indentation. So something like this. Yeah, I just sent you. It still isn't working. Shruti, can you share your collab link? Then I can maybe see. There is no test today, Jerry. Test is on January 9th. Okay, cool. So someone else did a bike thing.
It's not giving anything when I test it.
Sorry, who is this? Oh, Meghna? Yeah, you
Yeah.
didn't create an instance of the class, right? You have to create an instance of the class and then call the method on the instance.
Okay.
Okay, class versus list versus dictionary. Very nice. Oh, Shruti, the only problem is you have a single underscore in the init. Special functions should have like 2 underscores before and 2 underscores after. And also, so let me share screen so that you guys can all see. And so there are 2 problems in this particular implementations of this class. What are the problems? Can someone point out? There are 2 problems. Okay, nice. Somebody created a city class. Okay, perfect. Meghna, perfect. Indentation is the first problem, right? If this method belongs inside this class, then it should be inside this class, right? So this indentation should be there, same as the attribute indentation method or function indentation should also be the same. What is the second problem? Actually, there are two more problems actually. Any guesses, anyone? Right, underscore missing. Where is the underscore missing? Oh, that's okay. I think everywhere she had no underscore, so that's fine. Another point. So where does this function belong? Is this function within this class or outside of the class? Right, it should be within the class, so it should have been here. Uh, and finally the underscore. So it should have two underscores, not one underscore. Now let's see. Okay, now it seems to be working, right? Yeah, it's if you're having collab issues, the only suggestion I have is to restart. Other than that, really not much we can do. Open a new collab session and see if it works that way. So does this make sense? The class attributes and the class methods should be within the class, like how function statements should be within the function, right? And init method has to be within the class and it should have two underscores before and two underscores after. Okay, so good practice. Hopefully this is, you guys are all able to create your own classes. If someone is not able to do it, please let us know right now so that we can, otherwise we'll continue to the next topic.
Yeah, I'm almost done.
You're muted.
Yeah, I was muted, sorry. Okay, so I'll repeat whatever I said again. Okay, so somebody asked this nice question, why are there two underscores instead of one underscore? That's because of convention. So in Python, when you don't have any convention, this is a function that can be accessed from the instance of the object. if you have a single underscore like this, secret method, so when I try to access this one, not here, but here. See, it doesn't even show me that secret method, right? So even if I try to call this, oh, probably poor choice. So this is a convention for defining private methods. So it's letting me call this method from the instance of that object. When you do 2 underscores, then that's a convention for doing internal methods that get called internally within it. So if I try calling this, it should probably still let me do it, but it should, there are special internal methods which are called by the program automatically. That's because the program knows it has to call underscore or the Python interpreter knows it has to call underscore init after you create an instance of the point. Because it's a specific method that it calls, and because they wanted it to make it such a way that nobody normally types this in their own class, because if they would have made it init without this, people could have accidentally created their own init methods, right? And then the interpreter does not know to call this particular init versus the init that you defined. So it's just a convention to make it special, nothing else. Yeah, the built-in functions, magic methods are like built-in functions which are called. See, when I did the equal to, this special function underscore eq underscore got called when I did equal to. When I did not have this, it simply did a normal equality comparison, right? It did a normal equality comparison between the addresses and it said, no, they are not the same. So since the interpreter has a way of calling these special functions, we have to stick to the way that the interpreter calls it as. So Prince, okay, Prince sent the code. So let's see one more troubleshooting and then we will, okay. So X1, Y. Okay, look at this one and see if anyone can figure out what's the problem. Actually, very good underscores missing for length. Underscores missing for length. You mean here, Sendil? Right, yeah, Shruti, you're right, yeah. Sendil, you mean here? No, so you don't have to have underscores, right? You don't have to have underscores. This is only for special functions that are called automatically by the interpreter. I had an without underscore function, right? Distance from origin. In fact, you almost never should use these underscores unless you are really coding these special methods, which there are a lot of them, right? Like multiplication, addition, subtraction, delete, get. So there are lots of special functions. Only then it makes sense to use this double underscore syntax. Otherwise, use without any underscore. Sure, yeah, that's okay. So that's not a problem here. There is no problem with the length function, this length function name. When defining the class line, he forgot the parenthesis. You mean here? Okay. So that's first problem. So let's see if that works. So still uses, oops, so something is happening. Okay, now it came up with a different error. Now it says x coord of first point is not defined. Okay, so this is actually a good introduction to the next topic. So yes, absolutely, Shruti. I'll discuss a little bit about why that is the correct answer. Yes, Satvik, you are right. Yeah. So all of you already seem to know the answer. At least some of you seem to know the answer. What you are missing is this self. Why do you need self? That's what I will explain now. So let's see if this works. Okay, so it looks like it works, right? So what is the role of self? If you remember, if you notice all my functions that I was typing self as the first parameter. But when I was calling the function, I'm not calling it with self, I'm just calling it with the values. So there is a reason why that is the case. If you remember, I told you this is a variable or an attribute of the class. But this particular thing is an instance variable, whereas this is a class variable. The distinction is something like this. If you had a floor plan of a home, if you had your home's floor plan, I don't know if any one of you even have looked at your own home floor plans, but back in the day where floor plans used to be on paper, it was easy to see. These days, it's probably very difficult to find your floor plans, or maybe you don't even have them. If you look at a floor plan of a home, let me just Google to show you what it looks like. Something like this. This is the floor plan of a home, right? It says kitchen is here, old kitchen is here, dining room is here, east parlor, west parlor, whatever. First floor plan, second floor plan, some huge home, right? So some floor plan of some home, right? These are all the variables, like kitchen is a variable, dining room is a variable. But if you want to walk into the dining room, you are not walking into the dining room on this paper on which the floor plan is drawn, right? You actually have to have an instance of the home, and then you would walk into the dining room or into the kitchen of that instance. Does this make sense? Like, this is the floor plan where there is a dining room. You can't walk into the dining room in the floor plan, but once you create an instance, you can walk into the dining room on that instance. So once you build a home, you can walk into the dining room inside that home, and that home will have the same plan. It will follow this plan. So similarly, when when whoever, I don't remember who was this, when you try to say this without the self, you are talking about something like the floor plan. You are saying, okay, my floor plan has value x1. Your floor plan can't have values. The same way how you can't walk into the dining room on the floor plan when it is drawn on the paper, your floor plan can't have attributes. It can only have definition, but it cannot have the value specified. So you can define it this way. When you are referring to that, you would be defining it with an instance, and self is an instance of itself. Now, some of you who have experience in other programming languages might find this little confusing. So first of all, is this clear? What is the difference, or why we need self to access the value even within the class? Because without the self, it's just definition of the class variable, and with the self, it's accessing the instance variable. So class variable versus instance variable. Now let's say what happens if I don't specify here, right? So I didn't specify anything for my new point. Now I'll simply print new point. What do you expect gets printed? Any guesses when I try to print new point? What do you expect gets printed? Anyone? So I defined a class. The class has two attributes, X coord and Y coord. I created an instance of a point of that class and called it new point. And now I'm trying to print new point, but I never specified the X coordinate, Y coordinate values. When I try to print, what do you think will get printed? Okay, absolutely. So Medha, that was the correct answer. So let's see. So 0, 0, because when this class got refined, it inherited this attributes with its initial values. Unless I go and change the values either in the init method or afterwards by using the instance directly, it still retains the ones that it inherited. It inherited these things, and that's always going to stay the same. Whereas if I change this and specify the coordinates, then it prints 6, 8 instead of 0, 0. Absolutely. So this is another distinction. These are class variables. These are instance variables. So whenever you are using within your methods, you are using instance variables and not class variables. And that's another reason why you have to keep having self pretty much everywhere. So is this distinction clear? This is class variable, this is instance variable. And when you want to use something, you have to use the instance variables and not the class variables. Because class variables are like the floor plan. And instance variables are like the actual building in which you can live. Okay. So good. Thanks for this starting point, Prince. So there we have defined them, and here we have all these self things, and this is the length of a line. Good class as well.
Can you check my code, please?
Oh, did you? Can you paste the link?
I did. It's in your private chat.
Oh, actually, a lot of people. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Okay, let's see. So, are you getting an error, Jonathan? Or oh, okay. This. Oh, okay. So, what's happening here? Okay, let's try discussing this one. What's happening here when Jonathan tries print Pokemon? Jonathan, what were you expecting it would print? Jonathan.
Bulbasaur, Pikachu, Rayquaza, and Zapdos.
Okay, so you were expecting that it would print all those things, but it is simply printing class Pokemon.
Yeah.
Right. So firstly, let's go over this one. This is also a good example, right? So first, if you want to define the class Pokemon, right, you should have a variable which is Pikachu is the name of a Pokemon, right? Or is that the type of a Pokemon?
Name
Or is it? Okay, so name, you should have name, right? And then if you wanted, you could have defined the string method or str method and simply said return name or self.name. If you did this, then you have to create your own new Pokemon. Pikachu is a Pokemon, right? And Pikachu's name is, let's even have...
every single one of the Pokemon listed here are names.
Right. These are all different Pokemons, right?
Right.
Right. So this is a Pokemon. So you would create an instance of the class. Each of these is a type of Pokemon or is an instance of Pokemon, right?
Okay, yeah.
So your Pokemon class itself just has name. It doesn't have Pikachu because Pikachu is a type of, is an instance of Pokemon. Same way like how you probably have two cars at home, right?
Right.
Each of them is a car, but it's not within the car class, the cars that you own. your car is a type of a car or an instance of a car, right? The cars that your family owns are an instance. So we can even define the init method. And if you want to, any one of you who are Pokemon fans, what are some other attributes a Pokemon can have? I myself am not that experienced other than watching some of you, some friends, kids play. Type of Pokemon or powers. Do Pokemons have powers? Health, damage, okay. Okay, so I can say self.name equal to nm. And now when I define this, Jonathan, you can say Pokemon equal to Pikachu. Now if you print Pikachu, now it prints Pikachu, right?
Okay.
So what did I change? Instead of creating class and within the class writing the name instances, I created a class called Pokemon, which has 3 attributes. And then I changed it so that when I call print this, it prints the name of the Pokemon. I can even make it print plus I can make it print its health, and I can make it print its damage. So we can say self.damage.
And also it says save failed on the top.
Oh, that's because I think I am trying to access your thing and it's not saving.
I
Because
just clicked save and I think it should solve the problem because I got off of it.
yeah, but I can't save, I think, Jonathan, because
I allowed you edit access.
Oh, okay. You allowed me edit access. Okay. Let me see if I can. Let me copy and give this to you. Let me try.
Click the show difference.
Yeah, it will save, Jonathan, somewhere. So it's trying to save now, but it still says
Yeah.
save. Yeah. Okay. So it's overwriting some differences. Okay. Fine. So now you should be able to get you back to your own code and see all this.
I'm gonna keep off of it in case it happens again for now.
Okay, so anyways, this is how you could extend your class Pokemon and build different Pokemons. And obviously you can add other things, right? You can add powers, you can add your tricks of the Pokemon, you can add how it fights. Pikachu has 90 health plus 50 damage, so you can put it in. Oh, okay. Oh, what is NM? I just didn't want to name of Pokemon. This is just the just a name of the attribute parameter to that function. Yeah, we can have a break in 10 minutes. So far we have looked at these few things. What is a class? How you define a class? Class variables, which are called as attributes. Then functions, different types of functions within the class. Functions which are without underscores are for the functions that belong to your class. You can put underscores here, but that's not the convention. Then there are some special functions within classes like underscore init or underscore str, underscore eq, and so on. These are called by the interpreter automatically when you perform certain functions, like when you create a new instance of an object, or when you try to compare two things, these kind of functions are called, or when you try to print it, these functions are called special. When you try to do some other function on the particular point or on the class, this idea of having the data of the class and the functions of the class all together is called encapsulation, and this was one of the main reasons why people started creating classes. So far with me, and then there is a class variable and instance variable. Another cool thing that Python allows, and you should be very careful when you want to do this, is it allows dynamically instantiating or creating class variables sorry, instance variables. You can create an instance variable. See, I typed z_coord here. And if I want to say, I can even type self.z_coord, and it should, when I try to print, when I try to say new point dot coordinates, if you look at it, it is actually printing my 6, 8, 10. Even though z_coord was not my class variable or an attribute that I defined when I created the class, I could dynamically add an extra instance variable and could use it in functions. But this is something that you should be very careful about, because see what happens when I do another point. See, it says point has no attribute called z_coord, because only this special instance of new point had z_coord, whereas this instance, another point, does not have z-coordinate. Hence, when I try to print it z-coordinate, it's not working. The init method is kind of like, yeah, Sendil. So init method is kind of like setter method. The only difference is setter methods are more like for properties, right? But this is more for function initialization for all the properties. You can consider very similar, yeah, very close to setter methods. So does this make sense? Why this is giving an error when I try to say chords and says there is no self.z_coord, but when I tried to print it for new point, it worked. When I tried to print it for other points, another point, it didn't work. What?
The code that is now giving me errors once again.
We'll look at it a little bit later, Jonathan. Once we start the break, we'll look at your code, okay?
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with instance variables or instance attributes, because you really don't want to use them without checking for in your class, so that you don't run into these kind of issues. Another thing you have to be very careful about, and this is the last thing we'll talk about before the break, is using things like this. Let's say, so is using lists or dictionaries or other collections, other mutable collections within your class definition. So let's see what happens. Let's say I have a method called, okay, I'll say neighbors. I'll have a list called neighbors, and I would call it add neighbor, right? So I would add a new neighbor with the x and y coordinate of the new neighbor, and I would say neighbors.add of neighbors.append. Would this work? Any thoughts? Would that work? Anybody? Would I get an error, or would this work? Okay, so someone says it would work. Let's try. I didn't call anything. So let's see if I add a new. So I want to add a new neighbor to this point. And what would the neighbor be? So 6 comma 8 has a neighbor that's like 7 comma 9. That could be a neighbor, right? So what happened? What's the problem? Okay, but why is it not defined? Looks like it's defined, right? Does it look like it's not defined? So one problem at least you can see is like self. I missed self, right? Okay, so now it seems to be working. So now let's see what the neighbors collection would be. So if I say print of new point dot neighbors, it should show me what are the neighbors, right? So it's printing that 7 comma 9 is, oh, I didn't have to do this, but okay. So 7 comma 9 is a neighbor. Now let's see what happens if I print another point's neighbors. Notice what is the neighbor of another point here? Why do you have to use self? So Avnish, the same reason as what here, right? Because without self, it's like this. It's like the kitchen on the floor plan. Without the instance, there is nowhere to specify the values of this. Same reason why we use self.xcode, self.xcode, self.ycode, self.neighbors. So a more real reason why self is because, and this is something that's more like history of Python. So when Python originally started, within the first 6 months to a year, Python was not meant to be an object-oriented programming language. The people who were creating Python were creating it as a more like a structural programming language. But the way they did it, they had done it in such a cool way compared to C or some other structural programming languages like C, that they could simply extend the concept that they had started with dictionaries and do this. So a class is extending upon how a dictionary works in Python, really. And if you remember in dictionary, is adding the attributes dynamically was something you could do with a dictionary, right? You could add a key dynamically. That was a named attribute. So they just went and made sure that you always have an instance specifier before this so that you can easily extend. So that's the historical reason. But the current practical reason is without this neighbors is just like an idea. It's not like an actual instance. But the problem at hand is not that, right? I added a neighbor to my, okay, let's even change this. I'll make it 3 comma 4 and make it 4 comma 5. I added a neighbor to my new point, but the neighbor for the another point also became 4 comma 5. Right? So that was that's a challenge because I didn't actually add any neighbors for my another point, right? I didn't add any neighbors at all. You can still see my code. I added neighbor to my new point, but another point's neighbors and new point's neighbors became the same thing. That's because when you use lists, if you remember this, right? So list A equal to 1, 2, 3, list B equal to list A, list B dot append of 4, print of list B. Obviously, you'll expect to see 1, 2, 3, 4. What happens when I print list A? What happens when I print list A? 1, 2, 3. Interestingly, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So this was something that we had already seen. When you assign a list to another thing, you're basically just assigning this address to it. Hence, when you add to this list, you have really added to both the lists. If you wanted to make a copy, you should have made a copy. That's a different story now. I hope this is like a short refresher on copying versus assignment. So same story here. Since neighbors is a collection like list, once I add to neighbors, it has gotten added to the entire class itself. So every time I try to get neighbors from this, it's giving me the neighbors that's there on the class. And same headache here. If I add another point dot neighbors dot add neighbor of 7, 8, right? And now print new points neighbors will print. Now both of them have the same neighbors. So somewhat confusing. So you should be very careful when you use attributes of type mutable collections like dictionaries, lists, sets. You shouldn't really use them as attribute variables. It's a very bad choice. If you want to use, you should probably end up defining those directly in some add neighbor, and then you can append. So now let's see what happens. Now if you notice, once I added the neighbor 4, 5, my new points neighbors are still 4, 5. We can say, if we'll look at how to initialize this easily. My another points neighbors are 7, 8, and my new points neighbors are still 4, 5. So I didn't confuse. So you should do it more like a within the function rather than as a overall class attribute. So just to recap everything very quickly, we have classes. Classes have class variables and classes have class functions or methods. Variables are called attributes. These are called methods. There are some special functions. And if you are setting something like a variable, you are setting the instance of the variable or instance of the attribute and not the class variable. Hence, you have to use self everywhere. And using mutable collections as attributes is risky. So this is the summary of what we looked at in the last 1 hour. You can take a 10-minute break and we'll come back at 11:15. I don't know. If you guys want homework, I can give homework.
Can you take a look at my code? That because it says MM is the error.
Okay, 1 second, Jonathan. I'll look at your code. Someone asked some other question. How do we submit the final project? So Aditya, you can send us, you can create a small PDF or a document, put the link to your final project code. If it's a GitHub link, you put the link to GitHub, or if you have done it in Colab, you put the link to your Colab session and send that one. On January 9th, you have to give a presentation, right? During that presentation, if you want, you can also show that, but it is best to submit the link so that we can also just run it once before the actual presentation and verify it. And also look at your code to see what you guys have done. So how to submit the final project? I'll include the instructions on how to submit the final project in today's class notes as well. So how many of you want homework? I'll ask this question after everybody comes back from break. Depending on how many people answer, we'll see. Final project is due on January 9th. You can do wherever you like. You can do the presentation on Google Slides. You can do it in PowerPoint, however you like, wherever you like. You will be presenting, you'll share screen and present. So whatever you're comfortable in, use that to do the presentation. Okay, Jonathan, let's look at your code. Oh, sorry, Jonathan. I changed this to name of Pokemon here, right? I forgot to change it here. Yeah, see, now it works. Here I had it as NM. When somebody asked what is NM, I changed the name of this parameter to name of Pokemon, and I forgot to change it below. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Can you take a look at my code?
Okay, 1 second. Let me just type this. I'm trying to type this just to show. Mm. Okay, so you want me to take a look at it again? Okay. Okay, so what now, Jonathan? What do you want me to take a look at? Jonathan, can you hear me? Hello? Can you guys hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah, what did you want me to take a look at, Jonathan?
On my side, there's something called NM, and it gives me an error.
Okay, I'll save it. Let me see. I will save it now and see if it works for you. Can you refresh and see if it still gives you the error? I just saved it.
Oh, the error's gone.
Okay, cool.
Also, I wanted to print every single Pokemon, not just Pikachu.
Right, then you have to start printing here, right? So you would do here. And you could add all of them to a list basically. And then print. You can do this. But right now, all of them are getting 100 health, which is pretty bad. You should probably change the health of each Pokemon a little bit.
Yeah, I wanted to make it so I can like say hit and it would change the damage.
Yeah, you should write those things, right? Like, so if you write a method, say hit.
And each hit takes away 10 health.
Right, so self.damage equal to plus equal to 10 and self.health minus equal to 10. If health, if self.health
Equals
less than or equal to 0, current
fainted.
self.name.
It's
Okay.
fainted. Just say it's fainted.
Has, right? So, okay, so let's see what happens. So, and you can even do this actually if you're interested. You can even do this.
So what does hit by do?
Right, I'll show you.
Wait, is break over?
In 2 minutes, yeah. So see, Jonathan, we can do this basically. Pikachu was hit by Bulbasaur.
Oh.
So now if you notice, so let's repeat this 10 times. So Pikachu has fainted when it was hit by Bulbasaur.
So if I add input, will it, so I can make it ask for the Pokemon name?
Sure, yeah, you can ask for the Pokemon name, yeah. Yeah, you can say Pokemon name. And you can even say Pokemon equal to Pokemon of and choose another Pokemon.
No, I mean like I just need to type like Pikachu and type like
right.
You would automatically hit.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So Pokemon name 2. So let's see now. I'll creating 2 Pokemons. Right, I just created 2 Pokemons and I'm saying Pokemon 2.hit Pokemon. So this is Pikachu. Another Pokemon is okay, and then we have to print Pikachu and print. So one of the
Oh, so it took a hit on Bulbasaur's health.
Yeah. Yeah, because Pokemon 2 is see, that's what this is no longer called Pikachu or Bulbasaur. This is just a Pokemon. It could be any Pokemon. Only when you print you saw its name, right?
Right.
So you can do this way. And this is how you normally use more classes, right? Like you don't want to type all this ahead of time. You want to get some input, you want to create a class of some type and give it some name and do continue.
Okay.
Yeah, so since break is over and probably everybody's back, let's come back to the topics for today. So just to show you guys how much we learned in the last 1.5 hours or so, these are the 14 things that I could think of what we learned in today's class. And we'll continue further now. So the next thing that we'll do is, let's say you have a car, right? Let's say, can you guys name some types of cars that you know of? Some types of cars, not some brands of cars, right? So some types of cars that you know. Sports car, so SUV, convertible F1, okay, coupe, okay, truck F1, vans, very nice. Okay. CRV, okay, sedans, okay, very good. So good enough. Lots of names. So what's the difference between a sedan versus an SUV? Height, okay. What else? Bigger, so size, width or size, more space. So basically body style, right? Like the body style is primarily different because there are some cars that are sedan is a type okay, while I suppose is yeah, you can have cars with high ground clearance or jeeps with very high ground clearance. Yeah, there are differences, definitely. Yeah, there are lots of differences between a car and an SUV. So now we will see if you are building a game, right? Initially when we were talking about, we were thinking of building a game where there is some car racing. Obviously, you don't want all of them to be sedans in your race car game, right? You want some of them to be SUVs, you want some of them to be huge trucks that will probably crush other cars. You want different variety of cars in your game, right? But all cars have to behave in a certain way also, isn't it? Yeah, you want monster trucks, absolutely. So we will now see how you can program to achieve this kind of having some common pieces or common functionality while also having some additional uncommon functionality. So in our car game situation, let's say, what kind of cars do you guys think should be in the car game? Just choose 4. Whoever types the first 4 names, I'll just type those. Formula 1, okay. Pokemobile, okay. Monster truck sedan, okay, good enough. Okay, so somebody said Formula 1 car. Then someone said Pokemobile. Is this really there? I don't watch Pokemon, so I don't know. Those who watch, is there a Pokemobile like Batmobile?
No, but I just came up with it.
No. We don't want hypothetical names. Already we are making up.
It is.
Technically a Formula One car.
Sorry, what is it?
It's technically a Formula One car. The Batmobile?
Not really, right? Formula 1 cars can't necessarily drive on regular roads. Batmobile can drive.
I gave you the link. It says it's true. I don't know.
Oh, Batmobile. Oh, Pokemon. Batmobile is a Formula 1 car. Okay. Yeah, we have never seen Tesla. Okay. And then. Oh, there is a Pokemobile. Really? Oh, interesting. Oh, hi. Okay, we can try Pokemobile. Looks cute at least.
Is that real or is that photoshopped?
Okay, so we have 4 cars. Now, what's common between all 4 cars?
They have wheels.
Okay, how many? Right, so we want something which captures the common parts of all of these, right? So we have class car. What are the common attributes of the car? Let's define the common attributes. Wheels, okay. They all don't have to have 4 wheels, right? So they can, some of them, maybe let's say you have a huge, okay, let's say for car we can say 4 wheels. We can say type of wheels and number of wheels. Okay, what else? Brakes, okay. Car brand, okay, all of them have some sort of a name, brand, not name, brand basically, right? Make, model. Brand is make, model is what type of car it is. Mileage, steering wheel, lights, okay, so lights, what is lights? Okay, so we'll just say lights, light color. So I'll put some color that I know. Okay, type of wheels we'll say are all Goodyear. Okay, now what common functions should all cars have? Okay, Michelin tires. Okay, someone wants Michelin tires. Okay. So what common method should
All cars should have brakes and windows.
apply brakes? Okay. So we are just writing all the common methods, right? Okay, what else do they have? Gears, okay, airbags is an attribute, accelerate, okay, good. Since this is a race car game, think of any race car games. What should they have? Accelerate, right? All of them should have accelerate. What else should they have in race car games?
Steering wheels.
Gears.
Okay, drift, somebody says drift, right? They should all have drift. And you should have apply brakes is already done. Gears, we can gears in race car. Yeah, okay. So we can say as switch gears, right? Because you don't have gears as a function, you have switch gears as a function, right? And then you can have nitro boost. What other games? Anybody who plays Need for Speed?
Maybe some kind of crashing mechanic.
Okay, yeah, crash. So crash and crash recovery, or we can say crash and recovery, right? Because in all sports cars games, cars do recover. Gadgets, okay, so what kind of gadgets? Okay, so some cool trick, right? In most car games, there are cool tricks using gadgets. Some cars have some tricks, okay? So this is all the basic stuff, right? Maybe we should have some more basic things, maybe like stop, because cars also should stop sometimes. Missiles like James Bond. Okay, we are doing a race car game, right? Not a spy game. Chainsaw attached to the front of the car. Which sports car game has chainsaw?
Need for Speed.
Need for Speed has, okay, we can then do that. So that could be like damage or destruct, and we can have self-destruct, right? If you are going into spy car domain, you should have self-destruct also, so that your car doesn't get into others' hands.
Hey, you should have missiles if you're going into a spy car game like Johnny English and James Bond. If you think about it.
Right. So this is all your destruct. In your destruct mechanism, you press the destruct button, it will do whatever you want it to do. Right. So these are all the various methods. Okay. Now, if you want to create Formula One car, Pokemobile, monster truck, sedan, that have, all of them should have the same thing, right? So one way to do this, and I'm making this very small. One way to do this is I can go and define a class called Formula One and copy all of this, right? Right, this is one way, and I can then go. So first we will all agree upon, the designers of this game will all sit and agree upon what common methods will this game have, and what eject for escaping, okay, we'll add those methods. Boosters, okay, that's nitro boost. So we can first agree upon all this, the designers of the game will agree upon this, and then we would go and all go and implement the same class with same attributes and so on. Does this seem fine? Right, I can create one class. One of us goes and creates a Formula One class. We could make a class inside a class. Not really class inside a class. We are getting there. Oh, gas refill. Somebody has a very good common sense suggestion. Yeah. So gas refill. Okay. So we'll get there. Whoever is saying class within a class. So this is one method. I could now, each of us could go and start creating our own classes which have the same attributes. Right. So this is one method. But this has a small problem, right? Let's say tomorrow we want to introduce self-driving functionality, right? Do you really need each car, or even simple thing like accelerate functionality? Does each car need to implement its own accelerate method? Right? Is there any difference between accelerating? I mean, how much you accelerate is probably different, but is there any difference between how you accelerate in a Formula One mobile versus a monster truck versus Pokemobile? In all the cases, you have to press the gas pedal, right? Only then you would accelerate, isn't it? So does it make sense to have accelerate method coded in every class? Anyone? Is it logical to say methods like accelerate or brake or gear or halt, should they really be applied in should they be coded each time in each class? Because they all do the same thing, right? How much they do is different. Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we are getting there. Whoever said Java, yeah, we are getting there. Right. So the way in which you can create the common methods together and then implement uncommon methods separately, the style of programming through which we do this is called inheritance, or the programming concept that allows us to do this is called inheritance. It's a very simple idea. Basically, if your parents have some property, you will inherit it after them, right? Same idea. If your parents are very wealthy, you'll also be wealthy because you're going to inherit, even if not everything, most likely you're going to inherit some or all of it. So you can inherit. That's a very simple practical idea, right? That you can inherit from someone, from your parents, or if you go to an amazing school, you by default inherit the reputation, right? Or you crack a superbly hard exam, you get some recognition, that is through inheritance, right? You are getting something based on because of some other achievement or because of something that is commonly associated with that. Hence, when we are trying to define our Formula One car, if we want to take advantage of this inheritance idea, we can do this. Now I'll make it a little bit bigger. When we are creating our Formula One class, if we want to take advantage of inheritance, here we can specify car. So let's see what happens if we do this, right? So I'll just entirely skip this whole class and this one. I'll just completely skip this and ignore these two for now. We are only pitting a Formula One class against a Pokemobile, right? So does this make sense? So when we want to inherit functionality from one to another, when we are declaring the class, we would say inherit from this and specify the class we want to inherit from. And for those of you who know other programming languages like Java or C++ or JavaScript, there are variants of this in all those programming languages also. You can, some cases, this is called as parent class, this is called as child class. In some other classes like C#, you inherit from an interface, things like this. So different classes, different programming languages have similar ideas, but the principle is the same. The reason why we use inheritance is so that the common code is separated from the not so common code. What is the not so common code? For example, Formula One car. What is something a Formula One car would have but not a Pokemobile?
Fast engine.
More speed.
That's just speed, right? I could still implement.
Maybe a design model would be different.
Again, something that you could implement right in the instance of that. But let's see. Okay, so let me give an example.
Low gas mileage.
So one thing, you're right, like speed, right? For example, so while accelerate is done, I would probably want to say, I can define accelerate method again here and say, what should acceleration do? It should change the speed, right? So let's say the speed of the car is initially 0. By default, when you press accelerate, we'll say speed equal to speed plus equal to 5. We are going to increase the speed by 5 each time you press the accelerator. Or for each second that you have pressed the accelerator, but this is hard to implement in today's class. So we'll just do this and then we'll print the speed. Self.speed. Right, so I can simply print the speed. Now, if I want to accelerate in a Formula One car, what do I do? Would the Formula One car also accelerate just 5 kilometers each time you press, or 5 miles per hour each time you press the accelerator?
No.
What could be a good acceleration? 10, 15?
50.
50. So that's a good speed. How about Pokemobile?
10.
100 speed.
No. Pokemobile is probably like 1, right?
10.
10 also seems too much, right? A Pokemobile should be slower than normal cars, not faster. Because this Pokemobile that we saw, how can this be faster than normal car? Or this? This definitely looks slower, if at all anything. So, okay, now we have defined our accelerates. So now let's see what happens when you do this basically. So same thing, if we want to declare a car, we created a car instance. Let's say what happens if you do car.accelerate. Oops. Oh, I never ran this. Okay, so car.accelerate is telling me that my car speed is 5. So each time I accelerate, I'll keep increasing the speed. Very straightforward, right? Seems like it's working. Now, if I want to create an F1 car, I'll say Formula 1 and then F1.accelerate. So here I didn't print the speed. I forgot to print the speed. Actually, I'll just call the okay, so now if you notice already this car speed is higher than the previous car speed. It already went to 50, right? So very simple stuff. If I want to print F1 dot, what did we say, tires, type of wheels, this one also works and the normal car also works. So I can have a car type of wheels, both of them have Michelin tires, right? So I'm able to use with this instance attributes that are there in the parent class, as well as change the behavior of functions that are there in the child class. So when I'm calling accelerate, it's calling the accelerate at the right place. And the way this does is it will first check in the Formula 1 class if Formula 1 class has an axial rate. So let's say if I want to fill gas, if I do this, if both car and Formula 1 car both say gas refill, even though Formula 1 car doesn't have gas refill, we are able to use the gas refill that's there in car. Does this make sense? Any questions? Any thoughts? So we are able to use not just the functions that are there within the class, but we are also able to use the functions that are there in the parent class or the class from which we are inheriting. This is a very useful idea because this allows you to separate out common code from uncommon code, and hence you can keep extending. And that's the fundamental reason behind inheritance. Any questions? Okay. Now that we inherited from a car, let's see something else. I'm just going through very, very briefly on these topics. If you guys are interested, you should definitely look up online on learning more about these. There are some challenges when it comes to inheritance if you are not careful, right? You should avoid doing those things. Let's see one of them. Let's say I add a brand new function to this class. Let's say this class has a self drive. Formula 1 cars probably don't self drive, but I've added a new function here. This is only now accessible in Formula 1 class. And of course, this is not a problem. I will discuss what are potential problems in a little bit. So if I do f1.self-drive, whereas if I try to do car.self-drive, it doesn't work, right? Because car doesn't have a self-drive, Formula 1 car has a self-drive. Oh, can I share my collab link again? Yeah, I can share my collab link again. So this is the idea behind inheritance. What we are trying to achieve is basically just separate out common code from the uncommon code and extend and even override. This is called overriding. In some programming languages, you can do this only on certain types of method, but in Python, you can override pretty much every method. Because in programming languages like C++, you can only override virtual methods, or in C#, you can only override virtual and abstract, no, virtual methods, yeah. So in most programming languages, you cannot override every method, but in Python, you can pretty much override any method. So I can, but that's a useless thing. If you're overriding every method, you should probably not even inherit from that class because you have deviated so far from it that there is no point. So in the next 5 to 10 minutes, you guys can try to create your own class inheritance idea. Try to create your own class where you build one parent class and inherit from the parent class to the child class. So build a parent class with 1 or 2 methods and create a child class with one method that overrides a parent method and one method that extends the parent method, one new method specific to child class. Oh, sorry. So what we are trying to do is we try to create a class first. Let's say we create a class called person, right? So person has first name, last name. And let's say age. And we can say right, this is a person class. And maybe we'll say set age. Okay, so this is a person class. Now let's say we want to create two types of people. One is a student. Student, in addition to having first name, last name, and age, also has a grade. Let's say which grade they are in. So now when we want to print a student, we want to say return self dot first name plus self dot last name plus self dot grade. Or we can define a teacher. Teacher also is a person, but teacher, let's say, has a subject that the teacher teaches. And when you print teacher, you want to print the subject that the teacher teaches. Does this make sense? So both students and teachers are people, hence they have first name, last name, age. But students have special thing called which grade they are in. Teachers have special thing called which subject they teach, right? Assuming you are in middle school or high school. Or does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So go ahead and create a parent class with one or two methods, and then create a child class with where you override one of the methods from the parent class and add a new method. Anyone, and then share code. And let's see if anyone, based on the mistakes someone or errors someone gets, we can learn more about what can go wrong when you do something like this. And as you're doing this, the primary reason for using inheritance is so that you can completely reuse everything from the first class. And since classes are a way in which you can nicely tie the data and the functionality together, this addition of inheritance also improved the reusability of code a lot. This itself improved reusability a lot. It made things clear and you could reuse. Every time you want to talk about a person, you could reuse this. But being able to extend and create new types of people even extended the flexibility and power of programming languages. But oh, what I did with the cars. Okay, so what I did with the cars is similar thing, right? I just created a long list of methods, right? Just not long, but like more methods, right? My base class car has more methods, and my derived class Formula One, which is deriving from car or inheriting from car, is overriding some of the methods and adding new methods. Exactly like the person example, right? In person, I just had one method. Here, I just have a lot of methods. And in some cases, I'm using the methods that are there in the base class. In some cases, I'm using the methods that are there in the derived class. Does this make sense, Vijay? Okay. Anyone wants to share their code, like after you created a base class and derived a class from it? What if you have the same method in post classes? That's good. So what if you have a same method? Like I have accelerate method in both classes, right? When I call formula1 car.accelerate, then formula1 car's accelerate method is getting called. But when I say formula1 car.gas refill, the gas refill of the base class car is getting called because formula1 class doesn't have any gas refill method. So if both classes have same method with the same name, that's called overriding. So method overriding is a common principle in so the method that you have in the child class gets called. If there is no method in the child class, then the method in the parent class gets called. Does this make sense? And the way in which the interpreter goes and figures out is the method in there in the child class or is it in the parent class is called method resolution order. We will get to what it means probably later. It's called method resolution order. So first it looks at the child class, then it looks at the parent class. But what happens if so you can share code, your code, any one of you who has done your code already. Especially if you are getting errors, please feel free to share. If you are getting errors, then we can continue and examine the errors so that everybody can learn from one person's mistakes. Okay, anytime, no problem, no problem. Only if you have done, only, no rush. Oh wow, somebody sent a big class. Okay, class drone manufacturer, drone name, cost. Okay, set cost, class ultralight drone. Okay, license cost. Oh, ultralight drone has a license cost. Very nice. Class professional drone. Very nice. Super. Looks very cool. Okay. But you should probably override a more generic method also, Mugil, because str is a special function, right? So maybe add another function like that set cost or not set cost. Maybe if you want to add something like set weight, right? Because weight of an ultra wide drone may be slightly different from professional drone. Okay, anyone else who wants to share code? Oh, okay. Yeah, write a parent class with one or two methods, write a child class with one where you override one of the methods in the parent class. And add a new method that's specific to the child class. This whole idea of doing writing methods within a class, these is called scope, or if you write a method within the body of a class, then it's called, the method is within the scope of the class. And that's the more technically correct way of saying why when you call accelerate, the accelerate of Formula One car gets called, whereas when you call gas refill, the gas refill of the car class gets called, because within the scope of the Formula One class, there is no gas refill method. It's the parent class's scope. And because it's in the parent class's scope, you can use it, but you cannot, it is not within the Formula One class. Okay, cool. Okay. Anyone else wants to share code? Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So it's not about the code; it's about the final project. But can I still ask it?
Okay. Yeah.
So say in the final project, for example, for the encoding one, the ciphers.
Yeah.
Say we make like 6 different ciphers like for encoding, and then we make 3 different deciphers for only 3 of the encoding ones. Would we still get extra credit for the 3 deciphers?
Let's see. Maybe if you do a good job, yeah. If you do a good job on all 6 encoders and good job on the decoders, then yeah, sure, why not?
Okay.
Okay. So just since I'm not getting any feedback, let's continue. If you guys are still trying, you can continue later after the class. I want to touch upon one final thing, which is called multi-inheritance. So let's take a more simpler example. Actually, let's take this example, right? You can inherit from more than one class. Is a idea that has a lot more use. So for example, let's say there is a cat. A cat is an animal. A cat is also a mammal, right? So a cat inherits all characteristics of animals. You can think of 2 types of inheritances. So one, you can say animal, and then mammal, right? All mammals are animals. And cat is a type of mammal, right? This is one type of inheritance, animal to mammal to cat. So you can think of this something like this. You can have a class called principal, who is a type of teacher, right? Probably principals also sometimes teach. I don't know if they always teach here, but in my schools they used to teach. So you could say define whatever. Right. So this is one type of inheritance where you are inheriting from a class that already inherits from a class. Now let's see what happens. So let's say I define a special method here called what would a teacher have? Can you tell me some function that a teacher would do?
Teach.
Okay, perfect. Teach. Okay. Okay, so teacher would teach some subject. Now, let's see what happens. So I want to create a new principal. So I instantiated a variable of type principal. So since principal is deriving from teacher, principal should have a teach method, right? Okay, so let's say teach and grade whatever. Okay, so principal should have a teach method, and maybe principal should have a conduct meetings. This is a special function for principal. No teacher should have this. Right, so principal can teach method, principal can teach or conduct meetings, or you can set the age of a principal. Right, okay, so self dot. Okay, so if you see, when we call conduct meetings, the method that's within the principal class got called. When I call teach, the method that's in the teacher class got called, right? So I can even say if self dot subject not equal to empty string, only then do this, else print does not teach any course, right? So for principal this happened, and then I can print the age of the principal. Right, so I can call a method that's there within the principal class, or I can call a method that's there in its parent class, or I can call a method that is there in the parent class of the parent class. Right, so this kind of multi-layered inheritance where we are inheriting from the previous layer, or I could have directly derived these two from person. Or maybe let's say there is another class called administrator, because principals are admins also, right? So let's say an admin should have, what can an admin do? Maybe admin conducts methods, meetings, right? Admins are conducting meetings. So let's say that's from admin. All admins can conduct. Now I can put a comma here and say admin. So I can inherit from multiple classes also. We'll go over up to 12, 5, 12, 10, 12, 6, 12, 10-ish, because I want to just finish this thing that we just started. I'm throwing a lot at you guys, but that's because we have very limited time, and in the next 2 weeks or so, you can spend time figuring out what this is. So as you can see, as you've already previously seen, when you call with one class, you can inherit from one parent class and call the methods that are there in the child class or the parent class. This is formula 1 is the child class, car is the parent class. We can call methods that are there in either the child class or the parent class. Or you can inherit from multiple classes and call methods that are there in any one of the parent classes or in the child class. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Does this seem simple or straightforward? You might want to look at the syntax on how you do this, but does the idea sound straightforward?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, cool. So this is why a lot of times when you look at a lot of modern programming languages, they emphasize inheritance and encapsulation and another principle which we will not get into in this class. They emphasize these principles heavily. And those principles, especially when you look at UI, right? When I look at my Chrome browser or my Windows Explorer, I have similar things, right? I have a window with a border, I have a minimize button, maximize button, a restore button, and a close button. I have when I right click, something happens, right? When I right click, something is happening. When I double click, something is happening. So all basic interaction is the same. The Windows you use, basically Windows is because every program has a window of its own, are all UI classes or user interface classes. And while they all have some common principles, they all are super different from each other, right? I don't have tabs here. I have tabs here. I can go and search something on the internet here. I cannot do anything on the internet here. But I can save my files here. I can't save my files here unless somebody is offering me online storage. So this idea is something that you guys have all used a lot of times already in your day-to-day life. And this has been made very popular as more interface related projects have started. Like when you look at websites or when you look at applications that you use, they're all about the same thing. So this is the last thing that we will read and look at in this class is multiple inheritance. And when you have multiple inheritance, this method resolution becomes important. First, it looks at, actually when you have multiple inheritance and the same named method in multiple classes, that's when it becomes important. If you have a principal conducting some special meetings or principal teaching some special class, then it first calls the method on the child class. If there is no such method on the child class, it goes to the first parent, looks at the methods on the first parent. As you can see, conduct meetings was neither there in principal class nor there in teacher class. It was only there in admin class. But somehow the interpreter knew that it went through A, B, and then C, and then found out that there was conduct meetings method in the third one. And this is the direction in which it goes. So if you end up having same named methods in both of them in multiple classes, it would call in whatever comes left in this list when you're specifying. If there is a method in principal class and teacher class, then the method in the principal class gets called. If there is a method that's there in principal and admin, then the method in principal still gets called. Same way, if there is a method in teacher and admin, the method in teacher gets called, and so on. So this is called multiple inheritance, and the way the interpreter knows how to call, where to call is by this method called method resolution order. So these are the 18 things that we studied this class. Just because we have a class only 3 more weeks from now, I will give you a small homework compared to usual classes, smaller homework than usual classes, just 2 questions. One will be very easy question and one will be a medium question. No hard questions, but just so that you guys can practice creating classes and playing with inheritance. I want a quick feedback thing, just last minute. For next class, what do you guys want to learn? Like the next class is somewhere in January, because the next class on January 9th is either class test or a project presentation. For the class after that, I have 2 choices. One is how to build user interfaces. I can teach how to build user interfaces, or I can teach whatever we originally planned on, which was how to get data from other websites or from using APIs. I think that was part of the user interface. Okay, one answer per person. Anyone?
I think we should learn how to use APIs.
Okay.
That's very important for constructing like bots.
Okay. Based on the feedback I'm getting, a lot of people are saying user interface. So next class, first we will learn about user interfaces, and in the class after that we will start APIs. So we'll do both. In the next class we'll do user interface then. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much the end of the class. I'll send out lecture notes and just 2 question homework and instructions for your project submission. You can create a PDF and upload it. And once you upload that PDF, you can include link to your project in that PDF. If you want to include the link, actually include the link in that PDF, and then on January 9th, you'll do the presentation. So that's it, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining. Hope you guys have a happy holidays. Okay, bye.
Don't forget to subscribe and like. If you have any questions, you can email info@agoramatrico.org or comment below and we'll reply back. Maybe. And if you want to see practice things or anything about us, you can visit our website, which is basically the end of the email but without the info and the end. So bye!